So my name is Mike Nichols, Senior Product Designer in Create and the Source Code team. So today I'm gonna walk through a little bit of a process, digging into a problem and how we're driving towards a solution. So the first thing, let me give you context on the problem that we're talking about. So we're talking about merge request settings, in particular around the merge methods and the squashing commits. So there's been a long-standing issue. It's been around for 5 years now. Basically, GitLab currently does not offer a way to git merge -- squash. This presents a few problems for some users, but it's hung around for a while because it's been a difficult one for us to solve. So first, I'd like to highlight one of the great things about working at GitLab and working in a transparent method is this issue is just full of free user data. So reading through this, there's a lot of times where our customers clearly laid out exactly what the use cases were and the problems that they had. So out of that, we're able to extract and distill down to what the real problem was. So some organizations do not want to require to get the merge commit history that they're looking for. Requiring fast forward merges can be costly, and it's just not something that some organizations want to do. But there's a second issue that popped up reading through there is that we currently don't allow the variance for changing merge strategies, and customers have use cases where they want to. Basically, for bug fixes and small things like that, a merge commit doesn't make much sense. But if it's a long-standing feature branch, in that case, merge commits do make sense. So started working on this a little while ago, 6 months ago. So this is how the current settings are currently today. The first step was adding in just the option for merge -- squash, which solved that, but does not solve the ability to vary. So work through trying to add in an additional option that would allow that to be an optional while doing that with radio buttons. This turned out to be an exercise in futility because it just would result in a number of combinations, and a lot of them just don't make sense. So out of that, we decided to kind of break apart the basically separation of concerns here. So separating out requiring fast forward merges from the merge commit and the squash merger. After working with Pedro and some other folks, we ended up settling on this design here, where basically we would separate out fast forward merging, merge commits, and this would result in the end. This is how this would result in the merge requests. So this all sounds good up until this point. This is where we kind of left this 6 months ago. Had a lot of confidence in the solution, felt great. I'd involved the counterparts. I'd worked with Pedro, the affected, the group that would be consuming it, worked with technical writing, had cleaned up a lot of things, had come up with a solution that we felt like solved the problem, cleaned up the UI, cleaned up some UI text, everything was great. Right up into the time a community contributor actually came in and asked some questions. And this set of questions here that I'm highlighting over here caused me to step back and say, this was kind of the Jurassic Park moment of spent so much time trying to figure out if we should, or if we could, should we? So out of this, I started to wonder and think that there might actually be a problem here. The problem was, it was a complex problem that I really struggled with trying to figure out how to articulate. Ultimately, I decided to meet with Sarah, the product manager, sorry, for this group, and also Kai, the product manager for the merge request review. And I knew there was a problem, but I didn't know exactly what the problem was, but I needed to raise the red flag and say, we need to stop and we need to pause on that. And that in itself can be a scary thing, to halt production and say, team, we got to step back in this, especially for something that's scheduled for the upcoming milestone. But to my delight and surprise, this wasn't viewed as a negative thing. Talking with Sarah, we all agreed that this is something that we need to get right. You know, this is Git. This is at the core of our product here. This affects merge requests. It also has impacts on CI/CD. This is not the kind of thing that we want to come up with a solution that is half-baked. We definitely need to know. So that was all good. The only problem was now I needed a way to get from a place where I felt like there was a problem, but I couldn't really articulate what it was to do that. So to do that, I decided I need to up my understanding of merge strategies and all of that. So I did some reading, did some blogs, reading, investigation, our docs, other people's docs, Git's docs. And reading things is great, but a lot of times seeing things is a lot better. So what I decided to do was, let's just try the product, right? Let's try it all out and let's see it and let's do it in real time. So what I did was I created a test project. I created a set of commits on a main branch and a set of commits on a branch, feature branch essentially. And then I used Git to make copies of that branch, right? So one fantastic thing about Git, why it's one of the greatest, you know, the reason why it is the source code management tool of choice for all developers is because it allows you to do things like this. Branching and merging has wonderful effects in everything we do. So what I was able to do from this was then create a set of merge results based on all of these, which then allowed me to look at the simply by the way I named them and changing the parameters that I use when I merge them, I could then compare and contrast all of these commits, what it would look like. Also allowed me to do this in a graphical format. So by comparing these things, I was then able to understand what the effects of all of these settings were actually going to have. So this was very useful, but it's tough to visualize and it's still difficult to kind of get your head wrapped around it. So then what I started doing was, let me produce a visual way to do this, right? Let me get back into Figma, the world I know, and let's put some visuals to it and understand things. So I created, basically, I took the results of this and transformed it into a commit history visually like this. I posted that and quickly realized that most engineers prefer to view this in graph form. So I reproduced these in graph form. And then it started allowing the problem to become a lot clearer. One, first thing we noticed is there's a ton of options. So really, these are the three ones that are available in the Git protocol. There's merge squash, and there's fast forward. And this is the proposed set that the settings that were currently designed we're going to produce. And the second thing you'll notice is there are multiple copies of them. So we started to understand what the problems were. And basically, it came down to four things. Is there intrinsic value in fast forward merging? Are users using the interesting one of merge commit with semi-linear history? Are there too many? And is it okay that there are multiple ways to get to these things? So then we were able to, being able to visualize these things, we're able to start working through and evaluating where these things are coming from, why the duplications were happening. And by mapping these out, you can get a clearer understanding of how they're going to work. And then for things like this one became clear right off the bat that it didn't make any sense to exist, because with everything off, the system is forced to just make a decision and it's not really mapped to anything and being a duplicate. So I then was going back and forth with some folks in the issue here, having discussions. And the other thing that this visualization allowed me to do is, one of the suggestions was, well, maybe we should just get rid of the checkbox and combine it together. We were then able to like visualize this and see what the impacts are and map across that. Another thought was maybe we had just made this too complicated, that it could all just be boiled down to the Git ones there. And there was a thought that maybe there are too many complications and we have created too many. But it turns out, being able to visualize it like this, you can see that it's really just the Git ones that exist, plus the squashing options that really produce the bulk of these. So basically, I wanted to highlight this as a way to, as a method for investigating a problem. So normally, I think if you've heard any of my UX talks before, one of the things I'm a big believer in is focusing on the problem. And generally that is user problems, right? I think my last one was about asking why, to get deeper and deeper in understanding the user. In this case, there was a clear user problem defined. The thing that it needed investigation was a lack of understanding of the product. So a deeper dive was needed there. So the next step is we do have an issue open to investigate the usage of that one that's in the middle. That might not necessarily make a lot of sense, or maybe it does, but we do have an issue open to check into the usage of that and see if our users are using it. And if they are, we're going to speak with some of them to understand what their use case is and why they see value from it. So to wrap up here, you have to have a fundamental understanding of the product to be successful in designing the product. It's okay to admit you need more time. It's okay to admit that you need help in gaining a fundamental understanding of the product. It's a complex product. Use the product to test the product, see the effects, see the permutations, especially when settings are involved. And I always focus on the problem and the solution will become clear. That's all for me.